Welcome, everyone. In today's lecture, we're going to take a structured and advanced look at token economy systems, one of the cornerstone interventions in applied behavior analysis, and a concept that the BCBA exam tests repeatedly because it reflects real-world intervention design. Over the next 13 minutes, I'll walk you through the conceptual foundations, the mechanics, the ethical safeguards, and the system-level thinking required to implement token economies effectively. Token economies show up frequently on the BCBA exam because they require integration across multiple domains: reinforcement theory, conditioned reinforcers, schedule design, and contingency analysis. These systems are not simply giving out tokens. They represent a full behavioral architecture that links moment-to-moment reinforcement with longer-term motivational structures. The exam often checks whether you truly understand the system as a whole rather than viewing tokens as isolated pieces. Throughout this session, you'll build mastery in identifying the essential elements of token systems, analyzing their functional relationships, and solving common implementation failures. Our objective is not only to understand the terminology, but to reason through how token economies influence behavior through contingency management, reinforcement history, and system dynamics. A token economy is a structured system in which tokens function as conditioned reinforcers. Tokens are delivered contingently following specific, operationally defined behaviors. They acquire reinforcing value only through their exchangeability for backup reinforcers that have established motivational strength. This structure allows tokens to operate as a bridge between the behavior and access to meaningful reinforcement, reducing the delay-related weakening of behavior. One critical point: the reinforcing strength of a token is entirely derivative. Without pairing and consistent exchange rules, a token is simply a stimulus with no functional value. Token systems work because they create immediacy, consistency, and flexibility. The immediacy of token delivery ensures the learner receives rapid feedback about the accuracy or quality of the response. Consistency comes from clear rules about when tokens are earned, which stabilizes the reinforcement contingency. And flexibility arises from the ability to rotate, vary, and update backup reinforcers, preventing satiation and maintaining long-term motivation. This combined structure makes token systems ideal for both skill acquisition and behavior reduction programs. A well-designed token economy depends on 5 tightly coordinated components. The first is a set of clearly defined target behaviors that are measurable, observable, and socially meaningful. Second, the system requires an explicit procedure for token delivery: when tokens are earned, who delivers them, and under what conditions. Third, the system must specify backup reinforcers, which supply the motivational value that sustains the token's condition strength. Fourth, learners must understand the exchange procedure, how and when tokens can be traded for backup reinforcers. And finally, some systems incorporate response cost, which involves removing tokens following problem behavior. Response cost must be ethically justified, consistently applied, and closely monitored to avoid harm. When selecting target behaviors for a token system, I want you to prioritize behaviors that are both observable and functionally meaningful. A good target behavior describes the performance with precision: its duration, frequency, latency, accuracy, or intensity. Behaviors such as completes 3 math problems within 10 minutes or requests help using a visual cue give us measurable endpoints that allow the reinforcement contingency to remain transparent. Vague descriptors like try harder or be good provide no anchor for measurement, and token economies collapse when the contingencies lack definition. The choice of token may seem simple, but it has important functional implications. Tokens must be durable enough to withstand repeated handling, portable enough to move easily between contexts, and sufficiently distinct that they cannot be counterfeited or confused with non-reinforcing stimuli. But the most important feature is psychological. The token must be meaningful to the learner. Whether it's a sticker, a poker chip, or a digital point, the learner must reliably connect the token with the anticipation of valuable reinforcement, or the system loses its behavioral leverage. Backup reinforcers are the motivational engine of the entire system. To select them appropriately, you must rely on systematic preference assessments, both indirect and direct. These reinforcers must be varied to avoid satiation, developmentally appropriate, and reliably available so that the token retains its conditioned power. One of the exam's most frequent traps is describing a token economy with weak, inconsistent, or outdated reinforcers. Your job is always to verify that the backup reinforcer maintains actual reinforcing function, not assumed value. Exchange ratios should reflect a rational balance between the learner's effort and the value of the reinforcer. If the cost is too high, for instance, requiring many tokens for a low-value item, you risk ratio strain, which leads to deteriorating behavior. A typical starting point is a relatively low requirement that allows the learner to contact reinforcement quickly. From there, we can gradually adjust the ratio based on empirical data. The exam frequently tests your ability to recognize when an exchange ratio is mismatched with the learner's motivation. Token exchange schedules vary depending on the learning environment. Fixed exchange times, for example, every 30 minutes, create predictability and allow the learner to anticipate reinforcement opportunities. Flexible exchanges offer more responsiveness to individual needs and can feel more naturalistic. End-of-session stores can maximize motivation by building a sense of accumulation and reward at the conclusion of the session. Immediate exchanges, on the other hand, are useful during initial teaching phases or when working with high-value reinforcers. A well-designed system selects the exchange schedule that best supports behavioral stability and instructional flow. Token delivery typically begins with a dense schedule such as FR1 to establish strong stimulus control. Once the learner demonstrates consistent success, we gradually thin the schedule, moving to FR2, FR5, or beyond to encourage independence and build behavioral endurance. The most important principle is not thinning faster than the data allows. Premature schedule thinning is a known cause of regression, and exam questions often test whether you can identify when such errors are made. As we thin a token system, we manipulate two variables: the number of responses required to earn a token and the number of tokens needed to access a reinforcer. Both forms of thinning increase the behavioral workload and must be introduced gradually. During this process, we monitor performance carefully for signs of reduced engagement, frustration, or inconsistent responding. The exam expects you to recognize that thinning is not arbitrary. It is always empirically driven. Response cost removes tokens following problem behavior and is functionally a form of negative punishment. For response cost to be ethical and effective, contingencies must be stated clearly before implementation, token removal must be proportionate, and reinforcement opportunities must remain available. We must avoid excessive deprivation because removing too many tokens too quickly can elicit frustration, avoidance, or aggression. A key exam point is distinguishing response cost from extinction. They are conceptually distinct procedures. Ethical design requires us to maintain learner dignity, ensure fairness, and monitor for unintended outcomes. We must confirm that token removal procedures do not produce harmful emotional effects and that reinforcement is equitably accessible. Furthermore, we monitor for collateral behaviors such as withdrawal, aggression, or avoidance. A token economy should always function as a supportive structure, not a coercive one. In educational environments, token economies appear in the form of class-wide reinforcement boards, group contingencies, and behavior contracts. They are often used to increase academic engagement, structure transitions, or promote prosocial behavior. Visual systems such as group token boards help learners maintain situational awareness and track collective progress, enhancing peer modeling. In therapeutic settings, token systems are frequently used for skill acquisition, compliance building, and the shaping of more complex response chains. By structuring reinforcement predictably, Token systems help learners build fluency, maintain motivation, and generalize skills across therapists and environments. The exam often explores token systems within teaching frameworks, especially where successive approximations are involved. Individual token systems allow for fine-grained control of contingencies and personalization of reinforcers. Group token economies operate at the collective level and leverage peer influence, which can amplify motivation but also increase system complexity. The exam expects you to distinguish the strengths and vulnerabilities of both, particularly in scenarios where group performance affects individual reinforcement. Many token systems fail because of inconsistent token delivery, weak or ill-matched reinforcers, unclear exchange rules, or inadequate monitoring. If the contingencies are not transparent and consistently applied, the conditioned value of the token deteriorates rapidly. Expect exam items that require identifying these exact failure points. When a token economy collapses, the typical causes include satiation, poor reinforcement quality, inconsistent implementation, and overly punitive response cost. Behavioral regression often signals one of these breakdowns. Your job on exam questions is to identify which variable is failing and how it affects the reinforcement contingency chain. Token economy questions commonly ask you to recognize missing components, evaluate reinforcer strength, adjust exchange ratios, and predict behavioral changes under modified contingencies. Whenever you encounter a token scenario, trace the full sequence: the antecedent conditions, the target behavior, the token delivery, the exchange procedure, and finally the backup reinforcer. This analytical chain will guide you to the correct answer. A token economy is best understood as a closed-loop behavioral system. Antecedents set expectations, behaviors produce tokens, tokens bridge delays, and backup reinforcers maintain long-term motivation. Viewing the system as a coherent whole allows you to evaluate how each component contributes to stability, behavior change, and maintenance. When designing a token economy, begin with operationally defined, socially significant target behaviors. Select durable tokens and motivational backup reinforcers, then establish a fair and functional exchange ratio. Continue by monitoring data to assess performance, adjusting contingencies and reinforcement schedules as needed. The guiding principle is simple. Token economies succeed not through intuition, but through database decision-making. To master token systems, remember that tokens are conditioned reinforcers whose strength depends entirely on consistent pairing with meaningful backup reinforcers. The integrity of the system relies on clarity, consistency, and ongoing data evaluation. When implemented carefully, token economies are one of the most versatile and effective tools we have in applied behavior analysis. Thank you for joining this session. Developing mastery in token economies will strengthen your reinforcement system design, deepen your contingency analysis skills, and prepare you exceptionally well for the BCBA exam. For continued structured practice, you can access a full-length free BCBA mock exam at www.themockexam.com.